Want to bring in Democratic Congressman James Walkinshaw of Virginia. He's a member of both the House Oversight and Homeland Security Committees. Again, we used that word nexus. You were very much at the center of many of the stories that we're following. So we'll start on the government shutdown. And I think this was already a very thorny negotiation on DHS. But it gets even more complex because later this morning, you're expected to hear in front of your committee from the heads of ICE, CBP, U.S. Immigration Services. What might you be asking them, and how might this make those negotiations only more difficult?
Well, look, I think you'll hear a lot of focus this morning on the killings of Renee Good and Alex Pretty. One of the things that I intend to focus on that is an aspect of the negotiation is the administration's perspective that the federal government should be able to smash down your door while your family's asleep without a judicial warrant.
Yeah.
I don't understand why the Trump administration is so wedded to that. I don't think the American people support that. I don't think my small government conservative Republican colleagues on the Homeland Security Committee would support that if they were being honest with themselves about it. That's critical in the negotiations. I think it'll be a critical discussion today in the committee.
But this is also the first time that you're hearing from these folks. And the reason it's happening is because the Republican chairman said, hey, you guys have to come in and answer questions about what happened on the ground in Minneapolis with Renee Good and with Alex Pretty. Yeah. Also, the fact that CBP, when they sent a report to your committee, there were several contradictions in their explaining of the events that led up to the Pretty shooting that directly contradict what Noem and Bovino and other top DHS officials said. So how do you start squaring that circle? And when you start doing that, at what point does the accountability question fall squarely at Kristi Noem's feet?
That's right. I think it's been at her feet from the get-go. And look, everybody who is remotely honest or sentient knows that Kristi Noem lied. She came out and lied, as did Stephen Miller. I think the directors of CBP, ICE, and USCIS will know that as well. It's going to be difficult for them to avoid that in the conversation today. I hope that they will speak honestly to the American people in a way that Kristi Noem hasn't. This is a time for honesty and accountability with respect to those killings and the overall operations.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of what they say is going to be factored into the minds of lawmakers as they continue these negotiations. I then also want to pivot to the other committee that you were on, because I was outside the Oversight Committee yesterday. You reviewed, not just you were there for Ghislaine Maxwell's testimony, but then also you were able to review at the Department of Justice these unredacted DOJ files. And we're saying unredacted, but based on your experience, some of these files are actually still redacted, right? So what is the explanation and just your initial takeaways? Take us inside that room as much as you can.
Yeah, so I spent almost 90 minutes at DOJ yesterday reviewing redacted files. Important to note, there are hundreds of thousands of redactions. Yes. It would take all 435 members of Congress months, if not years, to review them if we did it 24 hours a day. So we targeted some key files to understand why the redactions were made and what the redactions were. And my takeaway is a lot of the redactions that I observed, I could not explain, cannot explain in a way that's consistent with the law. I saw redactions of names and documents that clearly were not revealing victims or survivors. One that I think is notable is an email from Jeffrey Epstein's lawyers in 2009 recounting a conversation they had with Donald Trump at the time, where they were asking him questions about his relationship with Epstein. Trump in that conversation saying, for example, that when asked if he was on Epstein's plane, he said, I've been on a lot of planes. Dissembling, not giving clear answers. That entire document redacted has no information about victims or survivors.
So does it feel to you like the redactions are meant to protect the president?
I think that's a clear takeaway. There are some redactions that appear to be in that category. We also know that the Department of Justice failed hundreds of times to do the redactions they were supposed to do of the names of survivors and victims. So it's hard to square those two things. They're required by law to explain the redactions they've made. They haven't done that, and we're going to be following up, especially on the redactions we reviewed that don't seem to be consistent with the law, and try to understand why they've been redacted and get them unredacted if it's not consistent with the law.
Yeah, that explanation was supposed to come from the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, and even if she doesn't give it in written form, guess what? She's testifying on Wednesday before the House Judiciary Committee, so I imagine someone is going to ask her. Yep. The other piece of this that we were talking about yesterday on the Hill is the way that The Epstein Files we have seen have put new names into the public view, and some of them are serving in Trump's cabinet. I mean, we were asking questions yesterday of Chairman Comer about why are you not trying to talk to Howard Lutnick, even after interviews he had given where he said, I lived next door to Epstein at one point, I had been inside his apartment, I saw some weird things, and then, of course, the files only underscore that they may have had a more continued relationship past the point that Lutnick spoke about. When we were asking Democrats, including you, about this yesterday on the Hill, the response was, well, we can't subpoena anyone without the support of the majority. So I just want to underscore, is Comer and Republicans blocking an ask of Lutnick at this point?
Comer has not. First of all, Comer can subpoena Lutnick on his own.
Right.
Or we could have a vote of the committee. So at this moment, Comer has not subpoenaed or asked Lutnick to come in. I think there's going to be more and more pressure to do that. I think one of the things that's important here to note is, it's just kind of strange how many Trump cabinet officials are involved in this Epstein thing. So you have Alex Acosta, who is the prosecutor in Florida, who gives Epstein a sweetheart deal, becomes Trump's labor secretary in the first term, and now you have Trump's commerce secretary, clearly, at a minimum, lied to the American people and to his boss, Donald Trump, about the extent of his relationship with Epstein. Just very strange. Of all the people in the world, why does Trump keep selecting for his cabinets people who have very close relationships with Jeffrey Epstein? Weird.
Weird, and I also think weird that we are not just trying to bring in anyone who can help better paint a picture of what was happening in this orbit. I think we also have to point out that proximity is not criminal, and yet we are dealing, I think, and I've said this repeatedly, in a court of public opinion and a court of law. And those are two different things, but they are both related to the work that the committee is doing on Epstein and with the files. We will leave it there for now. Democratic Congressman James Walkinshaw of Virginia on multiple stories. Thank you for coming on. Before you go, though, you know we always do this. We've asked the viewers, why are they awake? Bridget sends along this photo and writes, Hank hears Allie say it's way too early for this from where he sleeps and knows it's time to get up for his medicine, which includes a little peanut butter. I was going to say, I don't want to be the Pavlovian response for medicine, but for peanut butter, okay, that makes sense. Jen emails in, I'm leaving for a 12-day trip to warm Costa Rica and Panama. Can we go with her?
That sounds good, yeah.
That's really nice.
I'm on my way to the airport. I'm going to join you.
Sounds good. And Linda shares this photo and says, Bella wants me to get up early enough to make coffee and muffins before your show starts. She's the boss. I would love a coffee and a muffin.
That would be nice.
Let's grab the coffee and muffin before we go to the airport. That sounds better than I think some of the stuff we're dealing with now. Congressman, thank you. I'll see you on the Hill. It's going to be another busy day. Coming up next here for us on Way Too Early, can you scroll TikTok in space? The new tech now cleared for use by astronauts could answer that question.